Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services. I have Greg Johnson here, our Director of Media Development, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, today in Box News, we have two different angles. So what's going on with the USDA's Farmers to Families Food Box Program?
Well, as we covered last week, the program changed for September 1 so that suppliers will have to pack, in addition to fresh produce, cooked meats and a dairy component, all that will add up to around 40 pounds. So it's a significant investment just in logistics. And so I suspected at the time that it will cut out some of the smaller produce companies that were assembling boxes. And I got a hold of Damari Company out of Dallas, who had a very large $50 million contract for the second round. And I talked to Paul Damari early this week and asked him what they thought about the changes, if they thought they would propose another bid for the next round starting in September. And he said they thought they would. He said he definitely sees that it's designed for more of a broadliner. And although they are not, he said they have worked with dairy and some eggs and some meat in the past on some deliveries, and they feel like they were completely up to it. He would not give me a number that they thought they'd bid at, but he thought they would do a substantial bid. And then the second part of that is, what will this do to the charities, the nonprofits that are distributing it? One of the things that USDA really made a focus was that the distributors need to be responsible for the last mile. Too many of them were dropping off hundreds of boxes at these charities and then taken off. And so it's sitting there, it's getting warm. The charities have to now invest all this time and labor into getting it to consumers. The whole idea was truck to trunk. It was supposed to go right into a consumer's car. And so that means they're going to have to invest more in the last mile. And so I talked to Brighter Bites, who had been working with produce distributors in their 6 cities and had really increased the amount that they were giving away by partnering with companies with the box program. In fact, Damari was one of the companies they worked with. And they said, with these changes, since they are a fresh produce organization, starting September 1, they're not going to work with the food box program anymore. And it's kind of double-edged. At one point, you know, it's disappointing for them because this really did increase the amount that they could do. But at the other hand, the boxes are still nutritious and they're going to help needy people. It's just not, it's not in what Brighter Bites does. Brighter Bites does fresh produce, and they don't work with eggs and dairy, and that's not part of their mission. And so they said they're going to be out, and they had some other thoughts. Overall, they still like the program. They still think it's good for consumers.
Yeah, and they've done some interesting pivots, you know, just over the last couple of months, because Brighter Bites is typically, and I've known them for years, they typically do a school-based distribution model. I've even packed boxes at a school before. And they actually started a pilot program this week in Houston with some coupons that they're going to work with 99 cents only at retail. So they've got some interesting pivots, and you've got an interview with Rich Stockman and Jennifer Boone with them that we will have in this newsletter as well. So it's interesting to see how they've done some changes and pivoted just like everyone else had to deal with the COVID-19 crisis right now. So we'll look forward to that.
Rich said, just like produce businesses, he is having to deal with extreme changes very quickly. And that's one of them. And not to mention, they work with schools. So this month is August. August is back to school month. A lot of places are not going back to school. What is Brighter Bites going to do? They said they're still going to do distribution drop-offs in school parking lots, the schools that they previously worked with, where they would work with parents to package all the produce into bags or boxes. And so this time they're still going to be in the parking lots and distribute produce. They're just going to have to do it all themselves. So we'll all be pre-packed.
Yeah. Well, in other news, we had this week, one of the bigger stories was a recall due to a salmonella outbreak from just one particular farm in California, but it's all 50 states and Canada. And we had a lot of interest in stories related to that. What's the latest from that recall? We've had a couple of updates.
Well, the latest we just posted today is that Taylor Farms in their Texas facility has also recalled their products that include those onions, and it's all related to the one California company. So far, there's no deaths that have been reported, which is a good thing, and it's pretty widespread. But I know there's a lot of consumer confusion because it is isolated to one company, and they know which sellers they went to or which buyers they went to, and they know which products are involved, which labels. But I'm not sure we're getting the word out to consumers very well. I see a lot of confusion, don't you?
I'm seeing a ton of confusion. I'm getting a ton of texts and emails and messages from friends asking me with a picture, are my onions okay? And
like, is this label okay, or should we throw it away?
actually, that label's not okay. That's part of, you even sent me that. It was like, hey, look what I found in my fridge, right?
Yeah.
And this reminds me of back in the day when we had the cantaloupe outbreak in Colorado. I actually had one of those, and I was eating it with my very young child and realized, oh, wait a minute, I have one of those cantaloupes. I think the word is getting out about the outbreak, but there's so much confusion among consumers about which onions are involved because onions are such a ubiquitous product. I even saw on one of my, I don't remember whether it was the Aldi group or the Frugal group, somebody posted a picture of Vidalia onions asking if those were involved. And I'm like, no, they're not, they're fine. And then another person chimed in that said that their Walmart removed every onion in the produce department. And it seems like it's raising more confusion than actually clearing anything up. I figured I would get, or I would see some notifications that my retailer is sending out that would say, hey, we recalled these onions. Most of them are pretty good about that. Publix sent out a recall notice. I saw that, and I figure that's the advice that I generally give people, is to check with the store that they bought their onions at. And there should be a recall on their website telling you whether or not you should throw those away.
Right, and the retailers know what was involved, and they shouldn't be on the shelves anymore. Hopefully that Walmart situation is very anecdotal, and that's even very temporary.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Onions are not involved in this at all.
No, most onions are not. And it's just a California grower, which is, not the largest onion producing area, or it could be right now, I don't know. It is a strange point of the year, but yeah, it's just, I think consumer communications on this reminds me of remember peach recall a couple of years ago when we had one in California, and I called one of the hotlines for it, and I was on hold for more than an hour trying to get an answer on whether or not the peaches that I had were actually involved in the recall. They weren't, by the way.
That's a lot of patience that a lot of consumers wouldn't have, including this one right here.
Right. Speaking of peaches and summer fruit, we also had this week's retail report with Anna Marie from 210 Analytics. And a couple of the more fascinating things that we saw, of course, produce is still up. We're up double digits, I think 11% year over year gains. And it's kind of, a couple of weeks ago, we were worried about normal weeks and whether or not we would maintain this growth in a normal summer doldrums between July 4th and Labor Day. And it appears that, Anna Marie believes that some of the shutdowns that are going on in some of the larger states, Texas included, are driving more people back to retail because food service has been limited again. Then we're actually seeing the effect of seasonality and impulse purchase on fruit. So you can see wide swings in sales and volume of summer fruit items like peaches and cherries and watermelon. And then in vegetables, you just see those flat. They're just up in general, except for corn, which you reported on with Ag Tools today. You do have an update on corn. There better news for retailers and consumers in the corn department here?
Yeah, prices are finally starting to come down a little bit, and more areas are starting to produce it. Part of the problem was the Southeast just didn't produce very much corn this year. So
yeah,
both Florida and Georgia were down. And so the early part of the season, there just wasn't much corn out there, and retailers had to price it high because they didn't have very much. And so that definitely affected demand, but now it's starting to come around. And maybe just later into the summer, people are more accustomed to eating corn then.
Yeah, and your local deal, especially like now we're getting into Midwest corn, and that's the time when everyone's really looking forward to that straight field to retail. I didn't, and this kind of shows you the value of the ag tools analysis that we're doing. I knew corn was bad. I mean, the volumes were bad. I didn't realize how bad until I saw that Georgia actually produced 90 million pounds less than they normally do. That was 70% down this year. That's how bad corn was this year.
Yeah, it helps those charts kind of put in the story into perspective sometimes. And it's nice to cross-reference it with the retail data we're seeing, because we see things in retail, and what does that mean on the supply and demand? And then we can connect those two, and hopefully it presents a little bit better picture of what's going on.
Well, especially when we have so much uncertainty with how much should be going to food service. If you look at overall volume, and then you look at how the retail sales are doing, then you have an idea of how much maybe is left out there in the market. We're also seeing some better numbers in tomatoes, for example. Strong consumer demand in the tomato category is keeping prices elevated, when you would think without so many restaurants open that there would be just a glut of tomatoes on the market. So some interesting analysis.
Yeah, the seasonality, everything is so in season. Like I took a kid with me to my weekly grocery trip. This is like half produce. Like, hey, we have some of that. That looks good. That looks good.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'll tell you, as we're eating it, it is all good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I actually have made 2 extra trips to HEB this week to go back for cantaloupes, because right now it's Pecos cantaloupe season, and you can't get those all year. And I've bought 5 in the last 4 days because they are so good. So
That's
right
impressive.
now, summer fruit is so good. All right, well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. Dog chewing on it. Actually, you know what, Val? I have a prop that I have to show off, and I haven't been able to show it off yet. My oldest friend has been learning to cross stitch for me, and she just cross stitched the whole alphabet with fruits and vegetables. This is all handmade cross stitch.
That's nice.
Yeah.
They put that in a frame, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's even an X. I don't even know what the X is. Himinia. I don't know what that is, but it's going on the wall pretty soon here.
I don't either. That's weird.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'd have gone with grapes for G. I'm a little disappointed there.
What's she? Garlic? I like garlic.
It's not as good as grapes.
Well, you like grapes more than I do. And of course, Q for quince. I can't think of anything else that we'd use. T for turnip. Yep. Oh, and V. V is Vidalia onion.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Has to have watermelon on there. That's good.
Well, for sure. But yeah, so there's my prop for the week.
Yeah, that's cool. It'll be more impressive when you show it all framed.
I know, right? Now I got to find a frame that actually fits it.